That was the first thought that crossed Hannah's mind as she stood outside the small, softly lit cafe on Maple Street, nervously smoothing the wrinkles of her simple blue dress. The evening breeze brushed against her cheeks, but it couldn't cool the warmth of her racing heart. Tonight was supposed to be special. It was her very first blind date. Her mother had insisted, almost begged her to go, saying, "Beta, you deserve happiness too." And yet, as Hannah stepped inside, her eyes kept drifting back to her purse, silently calculating how much she could afford if she only ordered the cheapest thing on the menu. Inside, the cafe glowed with cozy yellow lights, gentle music floating through the air. Couples sat across from each other, laughing, sharing desserts, clinking cups. Hannah felt a small ache in her chest. She had never experienced this kind of evening before. Since she was 15, she had been helping her mother clean houses, ironing clothes, washing dishes, and scrubbing floors so they could survive after her father passed away. Dreams had always come second to responsibilities. Her blind date, as described by her mother's friend, was a polite, simple man who works in an office. That sounded safe. It sounded manageable. She took a deep breath and chose a small table near the window. Her hands trembled as she opened the menu. The prices made her heart sink. Even the smallest coffee cost almost $3. A slice of cake was $5. A sandwich was $8.4. Her lips pressed into a thin line, and she whispered to herself, "It's okay, Hannah. Just order water. Smile. Be polite." What she didn't know was that at the table right next to her, a young man had already noticed her. His name was Adrian Blackwood. He sat with his phone face down on the table, untouched coffee in front of him, dressed in a simple gray jacket that hid the truth about who he really was. To most people, he looked like an ordinary college student. But in reality, he was the only son of one of the city's most powerful billionaires. He rarely used his family name, rarely showed his wealth, and preferred to observe the world quietly rather than live inside luxury bubbles. And right now, his attention was fully on the nervous girl sitting beside him. He noticed how she studied the menu for too long. How her fingers lightly traced the edge of the paper, how she swallowed hard every time her eyes landed on the prices. He noticed how she tucked her hair behind her ear again and again, as if trying to hide her uneasiness. And most of all, he noticed the way her shoulders slumped, like she was bracing herself for disappointment. Adrian felt something stir inside him, curiosity mixed with concern. A few minutes later, Hannah's blind date arrived. He was neatly dressed, polite in speech, and smiled often. But as soon as he sat down and looked at the menu, his tone shifted slightly. "This place is a bit pricey," he said casually. "But it's fine, I guess." Hannah forced a smile. "Yes, it's nice." "What are you going to order?" he asked, her throat tightened. "I think, just water for now." He raised an eyebrow. "Only water?" "Yes," she replied softly. "I'm not very hungry." Adrian, pretending to scroll on his phone, leaned just slightly closer, listening. The man shrugged and waved to the waiter. "I'll take the grilled sandwich and a coffee," he said. Then he turned to Hannah. "Are you sure you don't want anything? It might be awkward if you just sit there." Hannah's cheeks flushed. I'm okay." The waiter walked away, and an uncomfortable silence settled between them. Her blind date leaned back in his chair. "So, what do you do?" "I help my mother," Hannah replied. "She works as a maid. I assist her in cleaning houses." "Oh," he said, nodding slowly. "So you're not studying?" "I had to stop," she admitted quietly. "But I hope to continue someday." He smiled politely, but there was a faint hint of judgment in his eyes. "That's understandable." Adrian clenched his jaw. He saw the way Hannah's hands curled slightly in her lap, the way her eyes dropped to the table, as if she had suddenly become smaller. He could sense her discomfort, her embarrassment, her silent effort to stay composed. When the food arrived, the blind date began eating enthusiastically. Hannah sat with her hands folded, politely smiling, nodding at his words, pretending not to feel hungry. Adrian couldn't take it anymore. He called the waiter over. "Excuse me," he said calmly. "Could you bring another sandwich and a coffee to this table? Put it on my bill." The waiter nodded and walked away. Hannah looked up, startled. "I'm sorry, I think there's been a mistake." Adrian turned toward her, offering a gentle smile. "No mistake. I just thought, you might want to eat something." Her eyes widened. But I didn't order, I know, he said softly. Sometimes we don't order what we want because we're worried about things that shouldn't matter tonight. Her breath caught. Her blind date looked uncomfortable. That's very kind, but it's fine, Adrian said calmly. I insist. Hannah hesitated, then slowly whispered, thank you. When the food arrived, she took her first bite carefully. And then another. The warmth of the sandwich filled her with more than just comfort, it filled her with the feeling that someone, for once, truly saw her. As the minutes passed, Hannah found herself talking more. She spoke about her dreams of becoming a teacher, about her love for children, about how she used to read books under the dim light at night after cleaning houses all day. Adrian listened closely, smiling, asking gentle questions of her blind date, meanwhile, checked his phone repeatedly. Eventually, he cleared his throat. I think I just remembered I have an early meeting tomorrow, he said. We should probably end this. Hannah nodded politely, even though a quiet disappointment settled in her heart. He stood, paid his portion, and left with a quick wave. A silence lingered between Hannah and Adrian. I'm sorry your evening didn't go as planned, Adrian said gently. It's okay, she replied. I'm grateful, at least I didn't leave hungry. They shared a small smile. As Hannah prepared to leave, she opened her purse to pay for her water. For crumpled dollars stared back at her. Adrian noticed. He slowly stood and said, you know, this cafe has a loyalty card. If you let me, I'd like to register your name on mine. You could come here anytime and get discounts. She hesitated. I don't want to be a burden. He shook his head. Kindness is not a burden. It's a gift. Her eyes shimmered. Thank you, she whispered. Over the next few weeks, they kept meeting. Sometimes for coffee, sometimes just for walks in the park. Adrian never mentioned his wealth. He simply listened, encouraged her, and gently pushed her to apply for night classes. One day, when she finally received her acceptance letter, she ran to him with tears of joy. I got in, she cried. He smiled wider than she had ever seen him smile. Months later, when she discovered the truth about who he really was, she was shocked. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted you to know me, he replied. Not my money. Hannah realized that the man who once bought her a sandwich with kindness was the same man who now stood beside her, supporting her dreams without conditions, and it all started with $4. If this story touched your heart, reminded you that kindness can change lives, then don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Kindly Tube, and share this message with someone who needs a little hope today. Because sometimes, a simple act of care can become the beginning of a beautiful future.